Добар ден, драги ученици! Јас сум наставничка Лидија Ристовска Атанасова, вработена во основното училиште Партиније Зографски во Кисела Вода и денес со мене ќе работите на една граматичка структура, прилози со сочинственост во англискиот јазик. Но, пред да започнеме со часот, да ги погледнеме целите. Ке треба да ја усвоите новата граматичка структура, да умеете да опишувате дневни рутини, да го зајакнете разбирањето и владењето на граматичката единица преку вежби и активности и да се успособите правилно да ги употребувате прилозите за зачестеност или Adverbs of Frequency. Потребни материјали за денешниот час ви се молив и тетрадка. Before we start with the grammar, we're going to meet Emma. Today we're going to read a text about Emma's daily routines. Hi, my name is Emma. I'm 10 years old and I'm English. I live with my family in Brighton in the south of England. My day usually starts quite early. I always get up at 7:30 on weekdays. I usually wear casual clothes, mainly jeans, shorts, t-shirts and trainers. I always have breakfast with my mom and my little brother, Tommy. My dad never has breakfast with us because he starts work early on weekdays. I usually walk to school because I don't live very far. After school, I sometimes meet my friends or watch TV. We have dinner at 7:30 and I often set the table. After dinner, I read a book or surf the internet for a while. I always brush my teeth before going to bed. Now, look at the underlined words. We have usually, always, never, sometimes, and often. Today's lesson focuses on these words. They are called adverbs of frequency. What are adverbs of frequency? Let's look at the first two sentences. Anna plays football. Anna sometimes plays football. The word sometimes gives us additional information in the second sentence. Now look at the next two. They have lunch at school. They usually have lunch at school. The same thing happens here. Sometimes and usually are adverbs of frequency. We use the adverbs of frequency to say how often something happens. Now, let's look at the chart. Here we have the level of frequency. If we do an activity 100% of the time, as an adverb of frequency we use always. For example, I always play football. For 80% of the time we use usually. For example, he usually plays football. For 60% of the time we use often. For example, we often play football. For 40% we use sometimes. For example, they sometimes play football. And for 0% we use never. You never play football. When do we use the adverbs of frequency? We use them with present simple tense. Look at the two examples. He sometimes eats burgers at school. She never talks during classes. Eats and talks are both verbs in present simple tense. Now, let's discuss the position of the adverbs of frequency in a sentence. They always go before the main verb, but after the verb to be. Let's look at the first example. I never study at night. In the sentence, study is the main verb and never as an adverb of frequency goes before it. In the second sentence, he usually goes to school by bus. Goes is the main verb, and usually as an adverb of frequency goes before the main verb. Now let's look at the next two sentences. She is sometimes late. Is a form of the verb to be. That is why sometimes as an adverb of frequency goes after it. In the second sentence, we are always together. Are is a form of the verb to be, and that is why always as an adverb of frequency goes after it. Now, let's start with the exercises. In the first exercise, we put the words in the correct order to make sentences. You're going to do the exercise in your notebooks. You're going to pause the video here, and after you finish the exercise, we're going to check the answers together. Let's look at the answers of the first exercise. I sometimes go swimming on Sunday. It's often cold in our house. Sam is usually hungry after school. My cousin never goes cycling. Mark and Ted often read books. I always do my homework in my room. It usually snows in this area. Now, let's go to exercise 2. In this exercise, you will have to rewrite the sentences. You're going to use the adverbs of frequency in brackets. Remember, we use the adverbs of frequency before the main verb, but after the verb to be. You're going to pause the video here, do the exercise in your notebooks, then we're going to check the answers together. Let's look at the answers of exercise 2. I'm always late for school in the morning. Sam sometimes goes out with his friends. Anne usually serves the net in the evening. My best friend never takes photos at school. They are often at home in the evening. Ted sometimes reads magazines about fashion. We always speak English in English classes. Now, look at exercise 3. Here you will have to answer the questions. Look at the example. The question is, how often do you read a book? You have 60% in brackets. For 60% we use often as an adverb of frequency. That is why the answer here is, I often read a book. So, you're going to pause the video here, follow the example, answer the questions, then we're going to check the answers together. Let's look at the answers of exercise 3. I often read a book. This was the example. Helen sometimes goes to the cinema. Joe never goes to bed late. I always do my homework. My parents usually go on holiday. Annie and Funny sometimes meet after school. My father usually washes the car. My mother always goes shopping. Mr. Ronald never takes the bus. So, let's revise today's lesson. We use adverbs of frequency to say how often something happens. We use the adverbs of frequency with present simple tense. Their position is always before the main verb, but after the verb to be. Thank you for today's lesson.